year was 1976. And at that time in my life, I was spending my summers with my uncle. Now, my uncle had a rather unusual occupation. That is, he raced earthworms professionally. Now, how many of you here have seen a professional earthworm race? Okay, a couple of hands raised in the back. Now, for those of you who have not seen a professional earthworm race, let me explain to you how it's done. A regulation earthworm race is 6 yards. Picture, if you will, a 6-yard dash. But remember, it's earthworms that we're racing here. So it's a 6-yard squirm. Now, a 6-yard squirm takes place in a large aquarium, 6 yards in length, with a glass bottom. Over the glass bottom is a shallow 1/2-inch layer of topsoil. There's a start line and a finish line on opposite ends. Now, over the start line is a very hot, very bright, full spectrum light. And the earthworms are placed on the start line, and when the countdown is complete, instead of firing off a starting gun, they turn on the very bright light. Click, and they're off! Now, earthworms, as you know, are very sensitive to heat and light. And so as soon as that light comes on, the earthworms immediately start to squirm away from the light. They squirm under the topsoil, but the topsoil is only a 1/2 inch deep. And they get against the glass there. But they can still sense the heat and light, so they squirm as fast as they can toward the other end, which is the finish line. And of course, the first earthworm to cross the finish line is declared the winner. Now, as a spectator sport, earthworm racing has a bit of a challenge to it. Because as I mentioned, the earthworms are racing under the topsoil against the glass bottom. So the only way to view the earthworm race is by lying on your back and peering through the glass. And you can imagine, as the race gets exciting, your breath is condensing in the glass. And you're trying to elbow it out, you elbow somebody in the nose. So unsportsmanlike conduct that could take place, And I can tell you about that, but I don't know, they'd be opening a whole nother can of worms. My uncle had this one earthworm. His name was Slippery Slim. Now, Slippery Slim was big. I'm telling you, this earthworm was so big.
How big was he?
This balloon, Slippery Slim could make this balloon look like a single strand of salamander hair. Tell me salamanders don't have hair? My point, exactly. But let me show you how big Slippery Slim really was. Oh! He was bigger than that. This was one big earthworm. And this was no ordinary earthworm. Keep in mind, this was a thoroughbred earthworm. I'm telling you, earthworm was thoroughbred, pedigreed, primed, pampered, and ready to race. I'm telling you, this earthworm was painstakingly spoon-fed firm squirm worm germ formula 32A every hour on the hour since his birth. I'm telling you, this earthworm was lovingly caressed and trained and disciplined for the stress of professional earthworm racing each and every day of his life. I'm telling you, this earthworm was fast. This earthworm was so fast.
How fast was he?
He developed himself a whole new revolutionary way of squirming. You know how dolphins down in the ocean, right? They pick up speed underwater and they pop out and fly through the air. Pick up speed underwater, pop out, fly through the air. Well, Slippery Slim did the same thing. He called it the squirm and soar technique. Now let me just show you how it happened, okay? How we did it. We had this, this is my prototype, my Slippery Slim prototype. All right, he would pick up that speed under the surface of the soil, and then he'd pop out and go right through the air. He was fast. And we called it the squirm and soar technique, but the other owners, they did not like it. I mean, they were jealous. I remember overhearing a conversation between two owners of other earthworms. It went a little bit like this. Oh, that squirm and soar technique, it's too unstable, too unstable. The other guy replied, oh, steady. Oh, Daddy wins the race, is what I always say. I knew these guys, you know, I mean, they were just worried. I mean, you know, neither one would wiggle their way out of woefully wondering whether winning against our wily and willful worm was even remotely possible. And you know, Slippery Slim was always trying to go faster. He started wearing this pink, the skin-tight pink suit. Right? It was kind of like an earthworm Speedo. And he said it would make him go faster, cut down on the friction, you know. But that fluorescent pink, I thought it was a little bit effeminate, you know. And I was talking to my uncle about it. I told him I thought it was a little effeminate, you know. And he laughed. He said something about our 6-yard squirm turning into a drag race. You know, and the irony of all that went over my head until years later when DeWitt Henricks explained to me that earthworms are hermaphrodites. And so it depends on which side of the earthworm you look at. I mean, on one side, you know, effeminate, but on the other side, ooh, nice. But I digress. There was this terrible tragedy, a very serious tragedy that happened early on in that race season of '76. You see, my uncle kept all of his racing earthworms in a large greenhouse. And of course you can imagine being thoroughbred, pedigree, pampered, primed, and ready to race. These earthworms are very valuable. So the door was always kept tightly closed and locked. Well, one day, my uncle and I were painstakingly spoon-feeding Firm Squirm Worm Germ Formula 32A, Slippery Slim, and the other racers. And the door was accidentally left ajar. And suddenly, horror of horrors, a robin flies in and sees Slippery Slim's mother hanging up his fluorescent pink Speedo, and the robin sees him, grabs up his mother, and the beak flies out, gobbles his mother right up, eats his mother right in front of our eyes. We slammed the door shut. I ran back, but Slippery Slim was crying out in anguish and pain as he made a vow to the moon and stars that he would search the world over and kill that bird that took away his mom. You know, I looked at my uncle and we were scared. I mean, we knew that even hell hath no fury like that of a worm that has lost his mom. But you know what? We didn't have much time to mourn because the race season of '76 was upon us. We were so busy loving, caressing, and training and disciplining Slippery Slim for the stressing of professional earthworm racing every day of his life. We had to get started because we had a race to go to. Now, earthworm racing, like all international races, starts out at the lower level, at the local level. You got to win the local level. The winners move on to the next level, the next qualifying event. So you finally get to that international race, right? It's almost like the Squirm Olympics. But this year, it was called the Slimy 6-Yard Squirm Worm Bowl of '76. And Slippery Slim had won all of the qualifying races, so we entered Slippery Slim into the Slimy 6-Yard Squirm Worm Bowl of '76, and we knew he would win that too. Hands down. Or as they say in the business, belly down. So ladies and gentlemen, race day is upon us. Now, the Slimy 6-Yard Squirm Worm Bowl of '76 was held in a huge outdoor stadium. And I'm telling you, every single seat in the entire place was absolutely empty. You should have seen how many people were trying to fit underneath that aquarium. Slippery Slim was already on the start line. The countdown referee has already started the countdown. 10, 9. Suddenly, I see up in the sky, it looks like a bird that's approaching the aquarium. 7, 6. It looks like a robin. 5, 4. And it looks like a familiar robin. And all of a sudden I'm seeing Slippery Slim move, and I'm realizing, and I'm saying, no, Slippery, don't, no! But it was too late. Slippery Slim had dived under the topsoil. With his squirm and soar technique, he popped out of the topsoil. Robin's flying along. Slippery Slim meets the robin right there, wraps itself around the neck, squeezes that robin. The robin falls to the ground, dead. 3, 2, 1. Slippery Slim was out of the race. That year, a much slower earthworm won the Slimy 6-yard Squirm Worm Bowl of '76. My uncle and I, we ran over to where Slippery Slim and their Robin were still lying in the grass, the Slippery Slim still wrapped around the Robin's neck. But Slippery Slim had this big smile on his face. Of course, I think it was his face. I mean, on earthworms, it's hard to tell which end is the face. But I was lamenting, I was upset. I said to my uncle, I said, look at this Robin appears right out of nowhere, and it was right before the race. I mean, a much slower earthworm wins because Slippery Slim is disqualified for crossing the start line too early. And I was beside myself, and my uncle, you know, he was just a cool guy about it. He put his arm around me and he said, well, Johnny, I guess this goes to show that slow and steady does indeed win the race. But, he said, and he pointed to Slippery Slim, the early worm gets the bird.